You're watching Next Pitch, the student-athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
All right, Dusty, week 2. Thanks for joining me for what we're calling the Sports D&A with Dusty and Anthony. I know you're probably the busiest sports guy in Oregon right now with everything that you've got going on. So I really appreciate you doing this, man. It's going to be a ton of fun.
No, this is awesome. I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Being busy is good.
Yeah.
And this is the busiest time of year. I mean, you know this, and I think a lot of people can relate to this outside of, you know, the world, is that you go through in our orbit in the media, you go from your work hat to your dad hat, to your coach dad hat, to your husband hat, and it is busy, but it goes by really fast. So whether we're going through cheer, soccer, flag football, fall baseball, everything in between, it's all worth it, man.
You know what? The hardest part of that, and we didn't talk about this very much, but it's just trying to figure out how to be good at all that stuff is the most difficult thing, and being present enough to let each one of those things go. And I think whether you're in sports or business or whatever you're doing, that's the hardest thing about parenting, is trying to be present when you're doing all of those other things. They just kind of, you feel like you're bad at everything, and figuring out how to be present will help you be better.
No doubt about it. And that's like the whole put your phone away and don't look at it. You know, we live in a world of distractions.
Yep.
And it is so hard, but it is the best thing that you could possibly do in that. I mean, do you want to talk about one thing that'll do it? That's it right there.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Because it gets a distraction for us as adults. It's a distraction for the kids too. It's a distraction for everybody.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, let's get into the national distraction, which seems to be football. Big Ten gave us quite a weekend, and let's start here with, you know, here locally. You're the sideline reporter for the Ducks, and that had to be quite a I don't know if a shock to the system for them to lose at home, but that doesn't happen very often. When I was watching on TV, the thing that jumped off the screen to me was how fast Indiana's defense was at all levels. And that used to be something that was, we talk about the SEC being fast all the time, right? I think the Big Ten is the fastest conference as I'm watching now. Oh, just as a whole. What did that look like to you? And am I off base on that with the speed and what kind of Oregon expecting them to be the fastest team, and Indiana looked like they were faster?
There's been a pivot, and that was it, right? The SEC was bigger, faster, stronger. And there was always that emphasis on the bigger and faster part when it came to playing teams like the Big Ten, where it was methodical. The West Coast was faster, but smaller. The Big Ten was bigger and slower. And the SEC always had that combination of size and speed. A couple of things have happened where nationally recruiting is as easy as ever with the explosion of huddle and social media to get, you know, guys' names out to so many different coaches across the country. And television has also made it so much easier to be like, hey, your family's still going to be able to see you.
Yeah.
Now NIL has, now your family's still going to be able to see you in person on the days that they won't be able to watch you on television.
Right.
So you've got recruiting is now coast to coast, and it's really internationally. When you look at the high end programs, and you can take Oregon as an example of this, because I just know it off the top of my head, Oregon has players from 26 different states and 3 different countries on their team.
Yeah.
And that is where the expansion of recruiting, it was always, well, you know, the teams out on the West Coast, they're going to be okay, but they can never recruit at the level that the SEC, which has all of those kids in their backyard. When you look at the size and speed combination, now you can recruit coast to coast, and it's becoming easier than ever to do that. But the speed of Indiana, it was apparent on the field, and what Kurt Cignetti has done with that program,
oh my God,
is nothing short of,
because that's a basketball school. Indiana and football have not for very long time have you said, oh no, Indiana's coming to town.
Yeah.
Like they have really changed, and that's a hard thing to do, change the dynamic on a campus of that. We're this is Bobby Knight's world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the way back to that. To change that to being known for football is a pretty remarkable shift in 2 years.
In 2 years. And when Kirk Cignetti got hired, it was like, well, who's this guy?
Right.
Okay, just another Indiana coach to come in. And he came in brash and boastful and said, I win. Google me.
Yeah.
And he was right. Indiana University of Pennsylvania is where he got his first head coaching gig. And he took a pay cut from being an assistant at Alabama to go and take that job. And he won. Then he goes to Elon, and everybody's like, what is an Elon? And he won there.
Yeah.
Goes to JMU, and at James Madison turns them into, a college football playoff darling. Now, they didn't get to the college football playoff, but every step of the way, he has won, and he's been impressive at every turn. He's an incredible evaluator of talent. And then taking that talent and evaluating, all right, this skill set fits into what we want to do in our system. And you kind of go, and he's a Nick Saban guy. He was on that Alabama staff. He took a little bit of a Nick Saban, which is also Bill Belichick as well, which is the do your job. And if you are really good at one or two things, and we have 11 of guys that are really good at one or two things, then our defense is going to be really good. You saw that. Same thing on the offensive side of the ball. You don't have to be dominant at every single thing, but if you are really good at one or two things, but the guy behind you can mask what you have your deficiencies in, you've got a really good unit on each side of the ball. And that's what Indiana came at Autzen Stadium with on Saturday. I was impressed. I had my radar went up late in the week when their defensive coordinator quote tweeted a reporter who'd said, Indiana is going to have problems in the trenches. Oregon's offensive line averages 320 pounds per guy. Indiana's at 275. And he quote tweeted with, "Oh, I didn't know we were so small and had no chance. Oh no." And I was like, oh boy, they have confidence in what they're going to be able to do. And what you saw is their linebackers, they were playing 53 and a third, sideline to sideline. They were impressive. It wasn't just pin your ears back and go. They were playing read and react football. It was a shock to everybody watching that game just how quick and physical Indiana was.
Well, and I think that the landscape's changed so much now that loss obviously doesn't kill Oregon, right? In the old days, you're done, and they're nowhere near done. Well, how many teams? I was looking at the standings this morning. How many of those teams realistically still, maybe they don't actually have a chance, but they woke up this morning as players feeling like if I win the conference championship, I'm getting into the playoff. It's just a significant change across the board.
It is. And you go back to a 2-team playoff and one loss was like, oh boy, like this thing is over.
Yeah.
You have 4-team playoff. It was very similar because then it came down to nitpicking schedules, and all of a sudden you're doing these cross-referencing and transitive properties of, well, this team beat this team, so this team is better than that team. And it was a mess. Now you have a 12-team playoff where, Dan Lanning said it in the post game after they lost to Indiana. He said, all of our goals are still in front of us.
Totally.
They really are. And even those goals of a potential Big Ten championship game appearance. Now you have to hope that Indiana or Ohio State find a loss somewhere because they don't play each other this year. And that's one of the problems with conferences being so big is that you don't have that anymore. But all of the goals of getting to the playoff, winning a national title, those goals are still there. The margin for error is gone, though. And that is where everything just has to be buttoned up a little bit more. And when you have a game in a loss that is humbling like that one, where it's the longest home winning streak in the country at 18 games is no longer for the Oregon Ducks. The longest regular season winning streak in the country, 23 games in a row in the regular season they'd won. That is no longer. Now you got to button things up, and that's the humbling nature of a loss like that.
So obviously everything's still in front of Oregon and Indiana and many other teams in the conference. The kind of the shocking news, and maybe not shocking that it happened, but kind of shocking that 2 weeks ago, or I think it was 15, 16 days ago, Penn State's ranked 3rd in the country, and they're having game day and the whiteout to losing their coach or firing their coach, and the story of that, which is just it's overwhelming to think about. They're paying him $50 million not to coach.
Yeah.
And where they go, were you surprised that they did it, or is it just something that they had to do? And what can Penn State, it's one of those deals to me is it's not that James Franklin's a bad football coach.
No.
right? Like he's not a bad football coach. He took over a program that was not too far removed from all of the bad stuff that happened at Penn State and has made them very relevant. What do they hope for at that place? Because the only thing that success will be firing him is if they win a national championship. Like they are selling out for that.
I mean, it's a slippery slope. And it's a slippery slope for any program that is making a coaching change, whether it's, a program like Penn State, which was a couple of plays away from playing for a national title last year.
Yeah.
And a couple of plays away from winning a Big Ten championship a year ago. And it's also a slippery slope for a program that's, 0-7, like Oregon State, who just fired their head coach as well, and Trent Bray, because the move means so much more to your program, because if you have a constant, now that constant is in flux. And what James Franklin did at Penn State, it really was pretty incredible, because I think people forget kind of where they were at when he took that program over. It wasn't a title contending, we should be in the conversation for national titles. It was, how do we pull out of this spiral in the post Joe Paterno scandal era? He did it. I mean, Bill O'Brien was there for a couple years to kind of stabilize, but then James Franklin took it and slowly built it up into titles are what they expect again there. And I think of the program that I think about in this regard, and this is where it can be such a slippery slope, is I think of the University of Tennessee, where they had Philip Fulmer, who is there for a really long time. And it was, well, this guy can't just get us over the hump. Look at where Tennessee has gone since 2009 and how hard it has been to get back there.
Yeah.
They have had their little surges where they're like, oh, Tennessee might be back. Have they really gotten back? Last year they made it to the college football playoff, and I think Josh Heupel is an incredible coach, and he might be the right guy that they finally have in place there. But they've had to go through so many different paths to get back to relevancy that's where it can be a slippery slope. And everybody's like, hey, well, we're Penn State. We should be able to get whoever we want. Tennessee thought that too. They have deep pockets too. They have rich tradition too.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
And it can take a really long time. It takes an administration has to have identifiers, and they have to make the right hire, because if they don't make the right hire right now, then you're looking at multiple years where it's going to be all right, well, maybe Penn State isn't the program we thought it was.
Yeah.
And that's a really difficult place to get back to.
Well, if you're paying somebody $50 million not to coach, you're going to pay someone $50 million to coach. And at least that person's going to get a long runway, because you can't buy out another one, right? Like they better get it right, or it's going to be one of the most expensive decisions it is already one of the most expensive, but it could get really ugly really quickly if you go get the wrong person.
That is so true. I mean, it can get just nasty in a hurry if you are Penn State in that fan base, because that fan base they're not going to tolerate multiple losses. Well, we're seeing that right now.
And players can leave, right? So that's the difference now too, right? Like they've got a pretty good roster. They would not have been ranked where they were, right? It's not like the cupboard's bare right now. But whoever there's going to be weeks and weeks here of these kids now being recruited to other places. This is what's so different about the environment that we live in now, that those kids, all the good ones, or many of the good ones, could leave. And whoever you get is could inherit a very empty cupboard.
Well, I was talking to, and I don't want to put this person's name out there, because they came to me over the weekend. They said Oregon broke Penn State. They broke everything about them. Like the team that took the field September 27th was not the same team that took the field the last 2 weeks, where they lose to UCLA and then they lose again to Northwestern. It absolutely broke that program, because within, all of a sudden the players started doubting it, right? The players started doubting whether or not they were good enough to win anymore. And at that point, that is where it's every man for himself in the transfer portal. And I would imagine we're going to start seeing those fractures happen sooner rather than later.
Let's talk about a buzzword in all of athletics, but let's talk about football here. The word culture. You just brought up that Oregon has 26 states represented in three international to three different countries. My last team at Utah, I had 11 states and countries represented on my team at Utah for 15 roster spots. And so trying to put all of that together to build that that culture. First of all, in football, what does that word even mean, right? So now, like, I think he brought in 80 new players last year, and I don't know the exact number for this year, but it's almost like junior college used to be. You're turning your roster over every year, every 2 years. And so that long build of bringing a freshman in, redshirting them, having them sit, play a little bit, move through the program, that happens some, but not a lot. So how do coaches think about culture, and is it even still relevant in today's world? And I think you've got an interesting take on this.
I think culture means more now than it did before.
Okay, explain that to me. Like, why?
Because I think culture, especially in football, has changed from buying into the culture. Used to be you're buying into the university, you're buying into the head coach, you're buying into, everything that has been here before you.
A long process.
That was, and it was history, tradition, that was the culture. Culture now has shifted, but it means so much in that I think what culture means now in the current era of NIL, transfer portal, coaches being hired and fired and going all over the place is we're in an individualized society, right?
Yep.
I mean, everybody is looking out for themselves, but the culture that means the most now, and you're seeing it with the most successful programs, and Curt Cignetti's a great example of this. Dan Lanning is, Kirby Smart at Georgia, Dabo Swinney at Clemson, even though they're having a down year, Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, Ryan Day at Ohio State. You hear about culture and what that means. It's about the individual, but how do you get the individual to pull for every other person in that room? Okay. And Lanning and Kirby Smart and Ryan Day, they all call it connectedness, right? Culture now in locker rooms is, all right, we're going to do right by you. That's how we get you here. That's how we're going to keep you here. But what really the culture is in retention of your roster is getting guys to buy in to every other player and figuring out why the guy that is from across the country or across the globe, what is he playing for and how can I help him too? In that, the culture has shifted. Culture just used to be, we are Alabama. This is what we do. You came here to win titles. That's our culture, is winning. Our culture is tradition. Now it is, all right, how are we to help me? I need to be able to help you. And the coaches that have the ability to do that, you're seeing have the most roster retention in college football, but also have the most success on the field. And it's just a different framing of what culture has always been.
So retention is something that really matters, right? You don't want to train your young guys and then have them leave, the ones that you really want to be there. What are some examples of what these programs are doing other than the NIL money, right? Because everybody has the same amount of money, quote unquote. I mean, obviously that's not exactly true, but from the collective, there's there should be a similar amount of money at the highest level. What are programs doing that differentiate that culture now that you're discussing there?
Kirby Smart does these things called skull sessions, where every week players from different position groups, different parts of the country, they get together and they have an open and honest conversation about anything but football. It is about their life, their background, their why. I know that, Coach Lanning at Oregon calls them get reels, and they do something very similar. They have their tweaks to it, but it is about your why for football. And it's not, in the world of college football, everything is so insulated. And even within a team, you have these fractures that often happen between the offensive side and the defensive side. But then within those two units, they could be completely different teams, for goodness sakes. Then you have your position groups, and you don't really interact outside your position group all that much, because when you think about it, you go to practice, you're stretching, you're warming up, you go to your individual session, then you have your team session, then you go to your meetings, and your meetings are in your individual position groups, then you have team, and then you have your offensive and defensive meetings as well. You're mostly with your position group.
Yeah.
Like that is where you are with most of the time. And what happens is the teams that can cross that over and say, no, it doesn't matter if you're a defensive back or an offensive lineman. It doesn't matter if you are from Lake Oswego, Oregon, or from South Florida. Like, we are going to find guys that, and we're going to make you understand what makes them tick, where they come from, and how they operate. Those are the teams that are the most successful consistently in the world of college football. And Kurt Cignetti in Indiana, they're no different. I don't know what their process is, but you look at what they do, and kind of he reinvigorated that program. He brought a lot of those guys with James Madison from him last year.
Yep.
And a lot of those guys are still there.
Yeah.
And so they all figure out kind of their why. But every program that is consistently good across the country, they have the ability to do that now.
It just has to be fast. It has to move faster.
Yeah.
There's more urgency to it. You don't have the time for your culture to kind of simmer and brew and go through and have your seniors teach the young guy. Like, it's got to be lived by the coaches, because that's where it's got to start. And then the guys that do remain have to be able 100% bought into what you're doing to filter that down to all the new people.
But make no mistake about it, you've got to be really damn talented at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like that is also the hardest part for coaching in the world of college athletics right now, is that they got to be really damn good too.
Yeah.
And then that is how you get your team from good to great to elite, right? Is that culture aspect of it. You need to have great players to be good. And that is where, so much you can go, hey, we're going to be culture driven. Yeah, I don't care if you get bullied around the basketball court or the football field. It doesn't matter how good your culture is.
I love you, but we can't win, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna have no culture.
You've got to be good.
Yeah,
but getting those guys who are really good to buy into everybody else, that is a tough thing.
That is a tough thing. So let's slide right into that, right? So we've got Oregon State University here, but I think this is a national conversation for these teams that were part of the big time that now aren't, or are in the leagues with, that made it into leagues, but would be those lower tier schools. I don't know. This is where I was coming from. I don't know if it matters how good Oregon State's culture is. If they don't get players, they can't win.
Yes.
And I was listening to, I can't remember who said it this morning. I might have been on 105.1 The Fan when I was listening to Dirt and Sprague this morning, but talking about some fan boards of coaches, fans not wanting someone who's going to come in and leave right away. We need someone who's got Oregon State DNA and can build from internally versus go out and get somebody who's going to leave in 3 years. I just, to me, that is so freaking short-sighted. You have to go get whoever the best football coach is and do what you just explained to the best of their ability. And if they elevate your program and then they leave, so be it. But if you just go get somebody just for the sake of they're an Oregon State person, they understand what the past was, you're probably going to be in the same situation having to fire that person again soon, potentially.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, that's a world of sports right now, is that if somebody comes in and builds it up and then gets an ungodly amount of money to leave, so be it. Every industry in the world goes through that. And college football is no different. But did they leave it better than where they got it?
That's right.
That is where you go, okay, if he left it better than where he got it, we can live with that. Trent Bray did not leave Oregon State better than where he got it. And that is inherently an issue, right? Now, Jonathan Smith took a lot of the best pieces with him when he left from Corvallis to East Lansing, Michigan to go take the Michigan State job. Again, that's part of the world we live in right now. But you have to be able to recruit and evaluate talent, develop talent, and retain talent. Trent Bray, by every account out there, is an awesome coach and an awesome person to play for. His players are going to social media. Their families are going to social media.
They love him.
He was not the problem.
Yeah.
And that very well may be true, because it's the collection around him that it's not just Trent Bray is not the sole recruiter of that team.
No.
Every other assistant coach around there is. Okay. But he is the guy who is in charge, and he is the guy who's responsible. And when you are 0-7, that is where you look at the top, not everything else behind it. That's unfortunate, right? That's unfortunate for Oregon State. That's unfortunate for Trent Bray, his family. And we talked about this last week. Like, there's families that are attached to this too. It's not just a head coach.
Yeah.
It's his family. It's the assistant coaches, their families. There's a orbit of people in the thousands that are affected by this move.
Totally.
And that is not good for any of them.
No.
But it is a results-based business.
100%. And it's not even what have you done for me lately? It's what have you done for me like 5 minutes ago. When you look at what happened with James Franklin, it's not just what have you done lately, because lately he'd been pretty good. The what he did in the last 5 minutes has not been good.
No, and that is, I don't like it, because I think there's a lot of really good coaches that do get run off. But when you talk about a $1 billion industry that is college football, multi-billion-dollar industry that is college football, look at every other multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
Look at, Nike just, did a reshuffle recently of their entire management, and that was because they weren't getting the results of their multi-billion-dollar industry.
That's right.
It's what college sports are now.
Yeah.
And we don't have to like it. We don't have to love it, but it's the reality that we're living in right now.
Well, you have to embrace it, or you're going to it's adapt or die. Right. And I'm curious, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but well, you're going to have an opinion. Obviously, recruiting has changed now for that mid-major, right? With the idea that of understanding, you got to understand, you could do all the retention that you want and do an unbelievable job of retaining your players. But if you have a quarterback that comes in and his sophomore year, he throws for 35 touchdowns and 4 picks and 4,000 yards, and you win 9 games because this guy's such a stud, he's leaving, right? Yeah. There's a great opportunity for him to go get paid and go somewhere else and play at the highest level, maybe improve his NFL chances. How does a Washington State, an Oregon State, those types of programs think about recruiting now versus what it was before? I bring in my guy as an 18-year-old. They may be not even a star, a 2-star guy, 3-star guy, develop them, grow them. And when they're all juniors and seniors, we're going to have a chance to compete. That world's over for those schools. So what is realistic in how they think about that recruiting?
I think Washington State is a great example of it, right? They go from Nick Rolovich to Jake Dickert, now Jimmy Rogers.
Yeah.
They have gone through it, and the ways that each coach has departed have been a little bit different on each one, but it isn't a woe is me attitude. It is a, okay, what's next, right? Cam Ward leaves us, goes to Miami. What's next?
Yeah.
John Mateer leaves us. He goes to Oklahoma. What's next? Well, we go in and we lick our wounds a little bit after Jake Dickert goes to Wake Forest and John Mateer goes to Oklahoma. We bring in Jimmy Rogers, but guess what? You go down to the number 4 team in the country on the road at Ole Miss, and you damn near beat them.
Yeah, they played great.
You damn near beat, and that it's not woe is me. It's all right. How do we get better the next time around? What do we have to do? You said it. It's adapt or die.
Yeah,
and that has got to be the mentality. It's not comfortable for anybody. It's not comfortable for everybody. But you look at it, and those mid majors, they go through it. But it's the reason why they're going through it is because the top tier programs are going through it too.
That's right.
The top tier programs, there's a reason why, Cam Ward had the opportunity to go to Miami. There's a reason why John Mateer went to Oklahoma. It's because those programs, they didn't have the guy that was there because guys were leaving left and right, or guys didn't work out that they thought were going to work out, and they had their holes, and they were like, all right, what's next? We need to adapt. Look at Oregon. They go from Bo Nix, who was written off and thrown away at Auburn, and he comes back and he's a Heisman finalist. He's one of the top picks, and he's playing damn good quarterback in the NFL right now. Then they go to Dylan Gabriel, who was in his 6th year, coming off of a 1-year stint at Oklahoma, and he comes in. He was amazing. They backfill that with Dante Moore. That's the way that the world of college football is working right now. And I think like the 4-year starter, boy, it's going to be a real blessing if a school can keep a guy around for that long.
Yeah, and I think the evaluation of talent has always been so important, right? In all sports, like that's your first job is to evaluate talent. I think you said something earlier in the segment and going back to it's also evaluating talent for what fits how we can win. Because not every single kid, you can bring in all of these talented kids, but if they all kind of play the same way, you have to be able to. I used to tell people all the time in basketball, a band full of tubas is not going to be very much fun to listen to, right? You got to have tubas and clarinets and trumpets and drum line and maybe an electric guitar in there. You got to be able to fill your roster with all of the different parts and pieces that make up for the shortcomings of the other people. Mm-hmm. And doing that evaluation long term so that you can then, I didn't get this guy the first time around, but he's in the transfer portal, understanding what that guy can bring to your program. You can't be behind. You have to even evaluate more on the front end.
Yeah. And you got to evaluate who the person is. You got to evaluate everything around.
Why are they leaving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the reason behind this? And do we have what it takes to maximize that person? And there is one of the hard parts is getting people to buy in that competition helps you.
Yeah.
Competition within wherever you're putting your work in, that will help you eventually.
Yeah.
And you have to find people that are kind of wired that way. And look, there's going to be a lot of people that are written off, and we see it in the world of the transfer portal now. It's like, hey, whatever happened to this guy?
Yeah.
Came in as a highly touted recruit. Well, it was because in large part, a lot of those guys, they didn't want to buy into that competition. They didn't want to buy into somebody breathing down your neck is good for what you do. And this is
good for winning too.
It is. It is. Because also you have to have such a good relationship with your coaches. Your position coach has got to be like, everybody looks at the head coach, and the head coach is responsible for everything. But especially I'm going to take college football in this, and college basketball is a little bit different because the head coach, smaller roster, 15 people, that you have to have a good relationship with those people. But your position coach is far more important than the head coach is to you as a player.
Yeah.
Because that's a person you're spending so much time with. But that person, your position coach, who you have to have a great relationship with, is also tasked with identifying, finding, recruiting, and bringing in a player that is better than you to replace you, to raise the standard of wherever you are at.
So it's so funny you just said that. I used to tell my players all the time, my job is to go recruit a better player than you. Yes. Your job is to make my job impossible.
Exactly.
And that's how competition works.
100%. And there's people that don't like that.
No,
and they say, instead of rising to the challenge and saying, I get it. Yeah, I get it. They go, no, I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm out. And if you ever wonder why, a person doesn't work out that was a highly touted recruit, or it goes into the transfer portal and ends up just getting lost in the portal forever, largely that's the reason why.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the fact that their athleticism or what they're able to do. It's everything else about what went into that person in their first stop and didn't lead to them having the success that they could have had.
Let's transition away from college football. That was such a good segue you just gave us there, to going into talking about the NFL. And I think one of the cool stories this year is kind of the resurgence of some of these quarterbacks that have kind of got dumped to the wayside, that they can't play, right? And I think there's some of these, you look at a guy like Mahomes. I just use him for example. He won the lottery, right? Yeah. First of all, he's talented, and maybe he works anywhere, but he got Andy Reid, right? He got the right coach for him. Mm-hmm. I look at a guy like Baker Mayfield, who's clearly unbelievably talented, not just throwing the football, but his kind of his moxie, the stuff that you can't write down on a stat sheet. That dude's got all of it. And I watch him play now, and I'm like, God, I'd love to coach that guy. God, I'd love to be around him. And he was kind of said that he was not that guy, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's a lottery. How much do you think where a quarterback ends up coming out of college really matters to his success? And is it more on the staff, or is it more on the kid?
I think it is on. Oh, it's always different though, because there are guys that they come out of college, they have all the skills in the world, and like I just talked about in the world of college football, they don't work in the NFL because of what happens between the years. Like Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning, that was a legitimate debate.
Yeah.
Right. Him going down to San Diego didn't help him, that
Yeah.
they weren't very good. The world of professional athletics, where the worst team gets the highest pick, probably doesn't help guys.
That's
Like
right.
there's a reason why they're really bad. Like Cam Ward is not playing well for the Tennessee Titans right now. Guess what? They're not a good team.
Yeah.
And that is Baker Mayfield is a great example. Goes to Cleveland. They weren't a good team.
They weren't. So, and I think it goes, as you just are talking about this, it pops back in my head how important culture really is. So now I'm back on I'm on the same side with you. So you look at what Mayfield did at Cleveland. He was brash, cocky, all the negative words that you say about someone's personality that way, right? And that's probably because of the culture of that organization. He goes to Tampa Bay. He hasn't changed who he is.
Nope.
No, I mean, he's even maybe more so the way he is.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's a leader. His guys love him. He's tough. He's not going to back down. Like all the things that you say positively about somebody who acts that way.
Cocky turns to confident. Brash turns to moxie.
That's
all
right.
of those things. Yeah.
And that's probably the culture difference between those two organizations.
And I think like Baker Mayfield said it himself last week. He's like, yeah, it's amazing how those things change when you're winning.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, like those, he's just like, I'm still the same guy and I am who I am. But I give credit to Baker Mayfield for not trying to change who he is.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big one, because a lot of people, and what happens is you get beat down by all of that.
Yeah.
The losing breaks you.
Yeah.
And it didn't break Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
He is adapted and he is saying, I'm still the same guy.
Yeah.
But it didn't break his will. For a lot of guys, Cleveland and Carolina especially, will break a guy.
Yeah.
It did not. I think going to LA, and when he got traded to the Rams and being with Sean McVay, I think that kind of reinvigorated him a little bit. But what he's done in Tampa has been nothing short of amazing, just because he never let anything change him. He's still the same guy he was at Texas Tech and Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put the two things together that we just talked about. In the NFL and in pro sports, you don't get to choose your team until after you've been there long enough to go. And sometimes it might be too late by that point in time. You get drafted where you get drafted, and you're just kind of at the mercy of where you show up. College athletics, you get to pick where you go. And I think for parents and athletes out there listening who are going through the recruiting process, obviously you have NIL money at the top level, but at any level of recruiting, whether it's Southern Oregon University where you played and I coached, whether it's at the University of Alabama, finding the place that fits you, your culture, your skill set, is far more important than the dollar sign or the league that it's attached to for the young person's development.
Relationships matter. As much as people want to say that recruiting is boiled down to NIL,
yeah,
relationships still do matter. And you see it because guys will go to one place, they'll be there for a year, enter the transfer portal, and they go to a place that was a finalist in their recruitment. And where they end up going is the place that they had the better relationship with. We see it time and time again, school after school after school. And those guys usually do find success after that, because they were like, hey, I made a mistake. I chased the money in some cases, or I thought the relationship was better. Nope. They're going with the relationship that they knew in one hand. And that is working out tremendously for a lot of guys out there.
Yeah, I think it's super important. All right, man. Anything we missed in the world? We got amazing stuff going on here in the Northwest. I have not had a chance to watch as much as I normally do with chasing my kids around. But the Mariners steal a game. It's going to be huge for the Northwest. Game 3 in that stadium is going to be wild,
especially after the Mariners steal game 1 and the way that they did it, with Cal Raleigh hitting a homer, Jorge Polanco coming through again for the Mariners. Like, there were so many times in that NLDS in that game 5 where it was like, oh, here come the same old Mariners again.
Yeah.
Like, this is where their back gets broken. But then they play dang near 2 full games and end up punching their ticket to the ALCS. And everybody's like, well, game 1, you can just throw it away. It's fine. Nope. They find a way to fight back. That Soto Mojo may be back in Seattle. And it's a really fun team to watch.
Yeah.
They got a lot of grit on that baseball team.
Cal Raleigh looks like an old school baseball player. Like
does.
that dude is built like a truck. And he reminds me a little bit of Piazza, just when he walks out there. He's a little bit thicker than Piazza, but he's an old school guy.
He is. And it's like they got guys all over that will beat you. Like Randy Rosarina with the catch that he made in the outfield in game 1, where it was like an inch from the turf and he just scoops his glove underneath it. And they got clutch guys all the way around, whether it's, Rosarina, Naylor, Raleigh. They have guys that will make the hit when you need it. And it was a good learning moment for my son, because we're sitting there and we're watching the game. It's like Jorge Polanco 0 for 5 comes up with a huge hit.
Yeah.
And it's the one that matters,
That's right.
Baseball is such a game of failure.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about guys who have just been beat down by a sport. Every single baseball player ever, because there is no player when 1 of 3 is Hall of Fame worthy. Like you have dealt with failure in your
100%.
life. Going through the minor leagues, getting called up, being thrown back down, and then back up again. Like how many great stories like that are out there in Major League Baseball? It's really cool to watch.
I wish they could. It's such a great game. I wish they could figure out how to make the regular season more urgent, right? Because there's nothing better than postseason baseball. The urgency of it, and it's what the NFL has done so well, and college football to the same, of making every game matter, right? The urgency of that. And I don't know that baseball can ever do that. They've done some amazing things to change kind of how the game is watched and viewed, and made it more, you don't have to sit for 4 hours to watch a game anymore. But that urgency this time of the year makes for some fun watching.
It is, man. And they are at baseball. You can't with 162, but I think you look at it and you say 162 games, it allows you to figure out who you are, truly who you are. Because if you were to cut this season in half, the Houston Astros, which were never a good team, they just didn't have the volatility that the Mariners did early in the year. They would have been the AL West champions. And they had no business being the AL West champions. Right. They had no business in the playoffs, and 162 games proved, and it came down to the last 5, that they weren't a team that was playoff worthy, right? So it's like this war of attrition and then figuring it out the hard way that makes teams successful. And the Mariners did it. And the deadline moves that they made, getting Genio back, getting, Josh Naylor on that roster, that's what pushed them over the hump. And now they are a postseason darling. And we could see the Seattle Mariners playing the team formerly known as the Seattle Pilots and the Milwaukee Brewers in a World Series. And that would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
The $1 billion roster of the Dodgers may have something to say about that, though.
They do have a few bucks to throw around down there.
Pretty good.
All right, man. Well, this has been fun. We're going to end this segment with Dusty asks me anything he wants here. I have no idea what's coming my way. Last week asked me what it was like to feel like to be fired, which I really appreciate. And then I thought about it for the rest of the week. I really appreciate that. But
your response was great. Right?
All right. What do you got?
This one, I actually like that I had this question before I even came in.
Okay.
Because I think the theme of what we talked about today really falls in line with it. My question that I had for you is, what is the number one quality that a coach looks for in a recruitable athlete?
Such a great question. And I think, obviously I'm not qualified to talk about what a football coach or a baseball coach or volleyball coach looks for. I didn't have one quality. I didn't. It had to be a combination of things for the way that we played. And each place that I was a little bit different. But like for us, you had to be able to shoot the basketball. Mm-hmm. You had to be able to defend for your position. And then the last thing and it wasn't the last thing, they're all kind of combined, is you have to be a good human. And my theme when I was at Utah, this is an interesting story. When I got to Utah, and we were in the Mountain West Conference, we could live on Mountain West Conference kids and win, right? Like you could, I mean, on not Mountain West Conference kids, on Mountain region kids, Utah, Colorado, a kid from Idaho, every once in a while steal a kid from Oregon, and you could win a lot of basketball games in the Mountain West Conference. Go to the Pac-12, and we couldn't win at the level we needed to. So there's some inherent deficiencies to Utah as far as recruiting for women's basketball. There's not a lot of players there. And all the other folks, while the Mormon religion is, they're unbelievably kind people, there's a stigma attached to Utah from the outside. And so we created a mantra, and we created a video that we broadcast out to the world, that you could be from the moon, have polka dot colored skin, worship worms. If you're a good person, you're a committed student, you can make a basket, you know, you're welcome on my team. And I think that we ended up with 11 states and countries represented on that group to go out that lost in the NIT championship in 2013. Really, really good team. And so I don't think there's one quality, because if you're just looking for long-winded answer, but if you're just looking for one, you're going to have a whole bunch of people that just have that quality. Mm-hmm. And so you're looking for, back to my band, you don't want a band full of tubas. You got to have a couple tubas, but you got to have a whole band. And so each position, each person, each position had its own unique skill set associated with that. And trying to put all that together is what I think makes the unique coaches from good to great, is how to take all of that and put it together.
It's a recipe.
It is a recipe.
It's a recipe. And every now and then you need to throw something in that spices it up a little bit. And in all honesty, every team needs a wild card or two.
100%.
You need one that if things start going haywire, you know that person is going to have everybody else's back.
Yeah.
And it may, in basketball, get a technical foul.
Totally.
Football, you could get a 15-yard penalty. You need those people, though.
I told people,
you can't have too many of them.
No, that's why I told you can have 13. As long as you have 13 non-wild cards, you can have one or two. Because if that number starts getting more, all you're doing is following the wild card around all the time, and it's not good for the team. The 13 can bring the other one up, and then that wild card just comes out every once in a while.
Yeah, and that was I found myself thinking about that when I was watching the Netflix doc on the Florida Gators.
Oh yeah, what a great show, by the way.
Boy, was that the complete opposite, though. It was like you had one just choir boy and Tim Tebow out there, and he was just in a world of chaos, yet they won.
Yeah, well, he had a gravitational pull to him that was a little different.
He is different.
And like I said, I am not qualified to discuss recruiting in football. I'm qualified to enjoy watching football, is about the extent of my qualifications. But in the athletics, well, I think in business, you want to attract people to you that are, as a leader, that are better than you at as many things as possible, which then helps your organization be better. Whether that's on your staff, your people around you, and then with your players, making sure that you have a variety of skills. And I think a really important thing, every team is different. And that's where I think Coach Lanning has really got this figured out, right? Is the season ends, and even if you had every player back on your roster and didn't add another person to the roster, that team the next year is going to be different, because you have people who are going to work harder in the offseason than others. You're going to have people that grow, get stronger, have different goals and beliefs now that they're not a freshman, they're a sophomore. And so really identifying how to make every team that you have a unique team to that year is critical.
Well, and there, to that point, is when the word culture gets thrown around, and we've talked about it a lot on this show, but pulling in the same direction isn't a bunch of yes men.
No.
You always have to have people that will question what you're doing, but not that doesn't affect the direction of the team. Right.
I say you want people to ask questions, but don't question my decision.
Exactly.
Right. Ask me questions, challenge what we're doing. But when the decision's made, everybody goes with the decision.
That's
right?
where pulling in the same direction is. Yes.
That's right. All right, man. Well, you're pulling the right direction. I'm really enjoying you doing this. Appreciate it.
Hey, this is fun. This is fun.
All right. Until next week, have a great sports week. It just keeps giving to us. If you like what we're doing, give us a rating. Reach out, tell us what you want us to discuss, and we're happy to do it on the show. Dusty, thanks, man.
Hey, thank you.